We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. If you're listening to this on the podcast later, you're probably wondering where this video is, but actually this is the one video per week that goes exclusively on the Line Movement YouTube channel. So if you're already here, welcome. Toss a like on this video when you get a chance. Consider subscribing, of course. A ton of live streams going on livemovement.com for a bunch of different sports. I know hockey's over now, but we have a bunch of awesome stuff for MMA as well. So if you don't want to miss any of those shows, make sure and hit that notification bell so you guys don't miss anything along the way. But now, because on the Joe Holka Show, we're always trying to bring you guys as much value as possible. That includes bringing on some of the best guests in the entire industry. So one of those people today, he's a director of DFS at 4for4 Football. He's kind of a hater overall of things like IPAs, but I'll say this, he's a lover of Josh Allen and most of all, Eric Decker. TJ Hernandez, welcome to the program, my friend. It's week 4. We finally made it work, man. Good for us.
Yeah, man, we're a quarter into the season after a crazy offseason and a crazy year. Yeah, you're right. I do slant towards hate, but the things that I love a lot, man.
That's fair. That's very fair. So I think that what we're going to do here is we're going to walk through. We can go DraftKings, FanDuel, whatever you prefer, TJ. You're basically writing about everything at 4for4, right? So I'm sure you're well up to date. One thing that, even before we get into it, TJ, one thing that I know that you're doing a lot better than a lot of people is contest selection. We were just talking about it a little bit before we jumped on and started recording this. So what kind of game selection are you typically playing? We're probably going to talk a little bit more closer to some of the optimal plays of the week, which might be better for some smaller field stuff. But what are you playing these days?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about game selection, everybody kind of knows the basic rules at this point: 80-20-10, percentage in cash, percentage in GPP, percentage of your bankroll. But where you can get nuanced is not only which tournaments you're playing or which cash games you're playing, but which sites. I talked about on DFS MVP, my podcast on 4for4 this week, the difference between tight and loose salaries. FanDuel super loose, DraftKings super tight. What do you do with those games? On DraftKings, I think you should be playing way more cash games. Tight salaries tend to favor players that can find value better. I don't want to say better players because there are different nuances, but I think a cash game player that's comfortable finding nuanced value is going to do better in cash games at DraftKings because of those tighter salaries and because of the scoring system. Whereas on FanDuel, you're going to be, I think you should be trending more towards GPPs just because salaries are loose. The point structure is favors a lot of variance. And then taking it a step further, when you are picking tournaments, what's the best structure? I tweet out or put in like articles, the best tournaments in terms of what I think the best structures are, flattest payout structures. I want a flat payout structure. Obviously, we want upside. So drilling down, and maybe that means going to another site. I'm playing a ton of Yahoo tournaments this year because I think they're the best value and I think they're the softest. So those are the type of things I'm doing, playing a ton of cash on DraftKings and then mixing my GPPs between FanDuel and Yahoo. I mean, I play cash where I can, obviously. You want to get some action. If you think you have an edge in any game, you want to exploit that edge. But I think doing things like that is the best way to maximize your edge. Like everyone knows how to build a lineup at this point.
DJ, you had me until cash games, man. Do those things still exist? No one wants to talk about cash games anymore, man. But no, everything you said is dead on. Like, I think that's like, honestly, the difference between some players that are profitable and some players that aren't are the ones that are actually willing to kind of look into those contests. Because like the reality is a lot of the GPPs out there are really not profitable spots overall. People are just firing at these big prize pools when you're just getting paid out 1.5x or whatever it is, and we got 30% to the top 10 or something outrageous. So I would say if anyone's watching this for the first time and they're just starting DFS, or maybe they just been having not a ton of success so far, I would definitely check out some of TJ's work in terms of what contests to actually be going after. So in the spirit of not talking about me playing cash games, I guess we might as well get start at quarterback. And I'm really interested in Ryan Fitzpatrick this week. He's 5,400 on DraftKings. Am I completely crazy, or is this one that's going to be really popular by the end of the week?
No, so this week is insanely unique because on the main slate we have 4 teams as it stands projected for at least 30 points, another 2 projected for 29. So it's like what's going to happen this week is we're just going to have a bunch of players, a bunch of quarterbacks cannibalizing each other's salary. A lot of lineups are cannibalizing each other's ownership at similar salary. And a lot of lineups are going to look really similar because everybody's going to be using Dak or Lamar or Russ or Mahomes or Josh Allen, whoever it might be, all those guys are priced the same. Most of their pass catchers are priced the same. Like, it's going to be really hard to build a unique lineup. The one spot, and I'm not just agreeing with you to agreeing with you. I wrote this up yesterday. One spot where I think you can get really unique is Ryan Fitzpatrick. Seattle's allowing the most yards through the air. They're really weak where Miami is strong, and that's it over the middle. I think that's really going to impact Gesicki, even though he's a tight end. It's really kind of like slot receivers is where Seattle has struggled. The Gesicki high A dot for a tight end, and we know Fitzpatrick can win weeks for you. We've seen it happen before. Back to his Tampa Bay days, we know he has the upside. So no, he's a really great tournament play. And like I said, I think a lot of people are going to want to be on this, and I think you might see some projection models that will put him at like above 5%, like 7% ownership. But look at the math. All of those games I already talked about, there's only so much ownership to go around. Ownership has to add up to 100% at the quarterback position. So if all these guys that I mentioned are getting like 10% ownership, which I think they will, the math says that Fitzpatrick just naturally going to be like, I think, a sub 5% quarterback, even though a lot of people are going to want to be on him. The public is not going to be able to get away from these crazy high scoring offenses. And I'm not either. Like, it's going to be hard if you're not playing 150 lineups, if you're doing something like I do, where you play 3 max or 5 max, it's going to be hard to get to him there, but it's really one of the only ways to be unique. And you can still run it back with DK and Tyler Lockett and get that side of Seattle. But no, you can definitely do it. And then on DraftKings, like DraftKings supports a pay down at quarterback approach. You might be one of the few cash lineups in cash that do end up with Dalvin and Alvin if you pay down. So no, it's not crazy at all. It's actually probably the sharpest move of the week, to be honest with you.
I hope it doesn't end up being popular. I like the Dalvin and Alvin thing though. I'm gonna steal that for sure. It just seems like such a different tier of salary right now, because even like anywhere near the Fitzpatrick range, we got like Derek Carr, we got Phillip Rivers, we got Kirk Cousins. I don't want to play any of those guys. So I think that like down there, at least someone that's going to give us a little bit on the ground. But also like one of the things that I really like about both sides of the ball in this game is that neither one of these defenses pressure a ton in general. So like we're gonna have Fitzpatrick sitting back there with a ton of time. I was just looking it up before this, but Seattle is actually in the bottom 5 of pressure rate and in sack rate so far to start the year. I get a small sample, all of those things, but I think that's interesting. You mentioned it quickly, but and I'm sure we talk about it a little bit at tight end, but just the injuries that Seattle has. Strong safety Jamal Adams is still out with that groin injury, so I think that leads to possibly a ceiling potential for Gesicki overall. I know Harmon was on earlier this week, was talking about Devontae Parker and talking about Preston Williams. So I think there's a lot of options in this game on the Fitzpatrick side. So I'm in on that. But yeah, we've probably spent too much time on one guy. We got to be more efficient. I'm trying. These short segments are hard, man. So we're going to get through it. If there's another quarterback out there not named Fitzpatrick, who is it? And don't say Russ, man. He's so hard to stack because everyone's so expensive. But if you want to go there, I'm fine with it.
No, I mean, like I said, we got Kyler, Dak, Josh Allen, Russell Wilson. They're going to be at the top of projection models, but they're all kind of the same because of their pricing, because of what they offer, because of how concentrated their offenses are. Deshaun Watson is like kind of the only difference in terms of salary. Like, he's in their tier in terms of his floor and his upside. We haven't seen it this year because he's played arguably the 2 best teams the 3 best teams in the AFC. Although, of course, anyone that follows me knows I would throw Buffalo in there, but. They finally get a break against Minnesota. Minnesota allowing 28 points in every single game this year, 2 300-yard passers. They don't get after the quarterback, which is a huge thing for the Texans because their offensive line is awful, and that's why we haven't seen Deshaun be Deshaun. But he gets back to what he does this year. He's like the only player in his tier whose salary has dropped. Everyone else has been balling. Their salary is spiking. So at 6,600 on DraftKings, you can at least have kind of a different salary. Save a little bit of money if you want to use him in cash. If I'm not playing Fitzpatrick, Deshaun Watson's my cash game quarterback for sure.
I love it, man. I know it took us until week 4 to get here, but those are my 2 favorite guys. So we're in line so far. I love Deshaun Watson. Again, just like he's so much cheaper than your boy Josh Allen, cheaper than Kyler Murray. So I think he makes a ton of sense, especially in this spot this week overall. Like, there's only 2 games, according to blitzbet.eu, in week 4 that have a higher over-under than this game with the Texans. So I do really like that quite a bit at running back, is there any reason? I guess let's talk about your boy Alvin and your boy Dalvin. I love that. I'm definitely stealing that, by the way. Is there a way to get away from playing both of these guys? That's my style.
Yes, salary restrictions. People are
Salary is a
going
thing,
to be.
confirmed.
Yeah. People on FanDuel, it's easy because FanDuel is just wide open. It's not easy, but easier. On DraftKings, you're just always going to have people that are scared to take on a true punt play. Like, it looks ugly when you have a Gabriel Davis in your lineup, or pairing him with a Hunter Renfrow. It doesn't look good, but we've seen it time and time again. Not just the floor, but the ceiling of having a studs and duds approach compared to a even build or a balanced build, it's going to be higher with the studs and duds approach. When you can get that second stud in a week, I mean, you got the cursed jerseys behind you. Barkley and McCaffrey aren't on the slate anymore. Zeke has been getting the workload, but there's so much variance in that offense because there's Dak stealing touchdowns on the ground. So many pass catchers can score. Like, they're the clear top two backs on the slate. And like, Alvin Kamara should be 9,500 on DraftKings, and he's $8,000. Like, he's at that point right now. Dalvin, because of his slowish start, he got back to Dalvin type work last week, 7,600. That's way underpriced. We talked about being able to get Ryan Fitzpatrick. There's enough value. I kind of gave away where we're going to go with wide receiver value soon. And then you have Mike Davis super cheap as well. Like, I just think that there isn't enough of a reason or enough high-end pass catchers to pay up at those positions. If you're playing cash games, like, get Alvin and Dalvin together in cash and just lock in that volume. If you're paying for volume over the long term, it's going to pay off.
So I guess one that I definitely got wrong last week before we move on from running back is I didn't understand why Mike Davis was just, in everyone's lineup last week. The beginning of the week, everyone moved away from him. But to be honest, I didn't see like a 9-target type of game coming. I didn't think he was going to walk into as much of the Christian McCaffrey role that he actually did. So at 5,700 in the spot against Arizona, obviously a really up and pace spot. Overall, I like Drake and I like Mike Davis in this game. I think this Carolina and Arizona game is pretty interesting overall. Do you prefer Mike Davis to some of the other cheaper guys in terms of running back this week?
Well, I think the week in terms of ownership and in terms of how I approach my lineups is really going to swing on if Zach Moss plays or not. If Zach Moss plays, then Mike Davis's ownership is going to be like in the 35-40% range, maybe higher. In cash games, it'll be 70%. In tournaments, it'll be like 40 to 50%. If Zach Moss is out, Devin Singletary is going to eat into that ownership because they're priced pretty similarly. So that is like really where I'm trying to like wait and see what happens. He's in a spot where like running back is a position where you can be pretty comfortable eating the chalk, especially when that like good chalk is high volume running back, low salary. That's good chalk. Last week, I agree with you. I think it was bad chalk. I wasn't confident enough that he was going to get 91% of the running back touches, 38% of the team touches. 48% of the team touches. That's Christian McCaffrey level work. That's like number one in the league type work. Now we have the information and the price didn't spike. So no, I'm playing Mike Davis everywhere, assuming Zach Moss plays. If he doesn't, I think Singletary actually becomes an insanely good price pivot in tournaments.
I like that. I like that a lot. So at wide receiver, I'm going to throw a couple names at you. You can let me know if you think, or let me know if I guess I missed anything. In kind of the mid-range, I'm really interested in DJ Moore, especially on DraftKings. I think he's just priced in this spot right now because he hasn't scored a touchdown. The volume's still been there for him. I guess for a little bit more upside for someone that's been underperforming, I think Brandon Cooks is really interesting at 4,500. But I think the big conversation to have in terms of roster construction is, should we still be paying up for DeAndre Hopkins? He's 8,500 on DraftKings, so you're really going to have to probably give up one of those Alvin or Dalvin type of roster constructions at that point. So what are your thoughts about wide receiver this week?
Let's start where you started. DJ Moore. On 4for4, we have him projected for 5 to 10% ownership. You'll see it shown as 7.5%, but that's really a range. So flirting with double digit. I've seen him projected as high as like in the 15 to 20 range. I think people like you and me and other people that do this are going to talk about DJ Moore.
Yeah.
But I don't know that the public is going to look at DJ Moore's fantasy output, and 20% of users in large field tournaments are going to take their shot at $1 million with DJ Moore. I'm not buying it. I think he'll come in close to 10% owned. But
Love that.
what we're looking for is high volume, high air yards, and he has those things. He's near the top of the league in target share, way up in air yard share. So he's cash viable for me at 5,600. But I don't think the average user is going to even think about making that play, especially if they're not using a lineup generator that shows him near the top in terms of value. Some of the other guys that you talked about going all the way to the top, like I mentioned in the running back portion, my priority is to get those two running backs together with the value we have elsewhere at quarterback, at defense, at tight, at every position, except for running back. So I'm locking those guys in over DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins actually limited practice with ankles, so that lower body injuries for pass catchers are very concerning. And we saw it with Devontae a few weeks ago. You're obviously that was an injury situation, but you're just putting so much in cash games. You're putting so much money, such a high percentage of your salary into a player that at the most is going to touch the ball 8 or 9 times. That's if they get 13 targets. Most likely touch the ball 6 or 7 times. I don't think you need to do it this week. There's a lot of value elsewhere. I think you're going to be better off if you're paying up for the wide receivers, like going with those high-end mid-range guys, the Lockett's, the DKs, the Amaris. I'd rather go there than you could save salary with guys that already tipped off. Gabriel Davis, who I'm not as confident in, is going on the other side. Hunter Renfrow, who I think is slightly more expensive. Like Davis scored, but they actually kind of had a muddled target share with John Brown out, so I don't love that. I think it's going to be chalk. I'd rather go Renfrow to save money. And then the Houston game, Fuller popped up with a hamstring injury today, so I was actually on the Fuller side of it, but now with that injury, I think it's Cooks. Both average depth of target over 12 yards, pretty similar in air yard share, despite the fact that Cooks has a few more targets. Their target numbers should be way higher. Like Houston's just been in some awful situations. I think they go bonkers this week.
Yeah, the thing about like I guess the struggle for Houston is their like schedule in general has been just absolutely brutal to start the year. But definitely keep an eye on that Fuller injury. That's good to know. I've got a bunch of stacks going out as of now with Watson, so that is definitely gonna have to be adjusted. Is there anyone that's like you mentioned Renfrow? I think that that's one that we went over with Matt Harmon earlier this week. So good to hear that from you also. I just feel like there hasn't been a lot of like slam dunk like really cheap wide receivers so far this year. Like you mentioned that FanDuel, you can basically do whatever you want. On DraftKings, it's a little bit tougher. I don't really love any of the super cheap wide receivers like Cooks, maybe N'Keal Harry at 4K, but that's kind of where it ends for me. Do you like any of these guys like below Cooks, like below 4,500?
Yeah, nobody really jumped off the page for me. I think maybe you can go T. Higgins after we saw him get an increased target share last week against Jacksonville, who's really struggled against the pass. I mean, everyone else, I'm going down the list here. There's nobody that really jumps off the page to me. I think some people will look at Cole Beasley because he had a big target share with John Brown out last week. Don't love him there. Maybe Andy Isabella. I don't like chasing touchdowns, but Carolina's just such a bad defense, and I really like stacking that game. It's pretty hard to get unique if you're stacking the Arizona side of things because they do kind of have a big three, and I think all Kyler, DeAndre, and Drake will all draw significant ownership. So Isabella's interesting if you're looking for a way to get unique on a team stack there. I'm not using Isabella like as a one-off unique play or anything like that.
All right, so let's move on to the last position we're going to talk about today, tight ends. We talked a little bit about Gesicki. He's 5,100 on DraftKings. Love the spot for him overall. But now that we have this, I guess, concern with Will Fuller, it actually makes me like my punt tight end of the week even more. Jordan Akins, 3,300 on DraftKings, 6th most routes run per game so far this year. I think he's an interesting pivot in tournaments off a guy like Logan Thomas. But is there a preference between those two guys at the super cheap end for you, or is there another one down there that you like?
I I don't think we can really touch the Logan Thomas until we see Haskins play better, until we see
Right.
Haskins get pulled. The volume is there for Logan Thomas, but one thing that I think people underrate for the tight end position is game flow. People talk about running backs. Tight ends actually generally need a pretty good game flow. Unlike wide receiver ones, they're not going to benefit as much from a team that's chasing points down big. And I think Baltimore just smokes Washington. Obviously, they're favored by 13, so I'm not like going out on a limb there. But I don't have a read on Akins. He's just one of those players that he keeps popping up in models that I look at, and it's going to be one of those situations where because I didn't have a read, I don't play him, and then I remember that the computer's smarter than me every time.
Computer usually smarter than me as well, so I'm with you there. Yeah, so I think for me it's just the game environment overall. Just I like the Aiken side of that, higher team total, all of those things. You mentioned the quarterback play for a guy like Logan Thomas. I will leave you with this one, TJ. So we've made it through this entire thing. We haven't talked about the Kansas City Chiefs once. They really haven't been on a main slate yet either. So Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill. I need the answers to the test.
I'm
and then I'll let
so
you go.
glad you brought up that question because people are going to look at historical splits against the Chiefs, which isn't something that you generally do player versus team, but against the Patriots, I think you can because Bill Belichick schemes to take away the number one, and that's traditionally been Kelce when these teams have matched up. Kelce did outscore Tyreek Hill in the last meeting, but the reason I am on Travis Kelce is because this situation is unlike any other that we've seen against not just with the Chiefs, but against Bill Belichick team in general. Kansas City's favored by 7. We've never seen the Patriots as big underdogs in the Belichick-Brady era, at least not like in recent history. And if the Chiefs progress as we expect them to this week against the Patriots, just like I talked about with Logan Thomas, we want tight ends and positive game script. I think it's because Travis Kelce has a really big day and Chiefs find themselves up big. So it's going to be a coin flip to people. We're seeing the pass catchers like Mecole Hardman come on, and I think that hurts Tyreek a little bit. Travis Kelce's going to be Travis Kelce, and I think he has a monster game this week.
TJ Hernandez, everybody. He's at 4for4 Football. Be sure and check out all the good work he's doing over there. Seriously, I've spent a lot of time at 4for4 over the last couple of years as well. So, TJ, always good to catch up with you, my friend. Best of luck this coming week for sure. And we'll try and get you back here soon.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.